It's been said the whole world is a stage and everybody plays a part. But the question remains, who's writing the script?
The man with the S on his shirt is huddled over his belongings in perpetual nights of slumber, avoiding shelters. The man with the S on his tattered shirt is schizophrenic, in training, having conversations with the vultures of the past who he allowed to steal his youth away. The black man with S protects himself in solitude. The man with the S on his shirt inhales the scent of cleaning fluid from his hallway cage cell. The man with the S on his shirt numbs his spirit out every Friday into a blue haze reverie of the past. The man with the S on his shirt fathers the next generation with no spotlight or acclaim, pouring out love and discipline in equal measures. The man with the S on his shirt creates something from his third eye and the blood pulsing in his veins in spite of assumptions that he is nothing. The men with the S's on their shirts gather in a circle of love that no one proclaimed was for them, with drums and horns in America. They will throw down their armor, guns, and bottles, letting them shatter and rust in the sun. They will all tell the same story about the S lodged in their minds as they lived in the land that taught their blood they would be dismantled or neutralized if they aspired to breathe. They will confess they were really taught to believe that they were indestructible and made of steel, chastising their brethren if they begged to differ. They will throw their Superman shirts into the fire at the center of the circle without remorse or shame. The night stars will come out. The moon will rise. They will drink their shared blood in ritual. They will give birth to their lives for the Creator.
Welcome to Around the Fire.
Hi, welcome. Come on in and join us here at Around the Fire. Today, me and a couple of brothers are going to talk about something very fundamental to the male gender. Check out this clip.
For me, when I had an image of who I wanted to be, I created my own image. I just said, how do I want to project myself to the world? What do I want people to see me like? How do I want to walk? How do I want to talk? And I literally, about 12 years old, just created this self-image of who God was going to be to the world. And then at some point, I had to kind of realize that it was a little boy that created that image. And, you know, so I had to honor that little boy and say, you know what, I thank you for that. You know, thank you for creating that. You know, I appreciate that. But there's much more to it than that even.
There is much more to manhood. And that's what we are going to discuss with my guest, Sheikh Hossain. Welcome, Sheikh. Thank you for joining us here at Around the Fire. And Mr. Guy Hobson.
Thank you,
the
Frank.
man who sparked this whole conversation with that statement. So, Guy,
Yes.
I am curious, man, because when you said that, 1,000-watt light bulb went off in my head as to, wow, did I ever stop to think about what I'm projecting as a man in the world? And when did I come to that? Guy, what was that experience like at 12 for you to have to define manhood? And what type of characteristics did you give yourself so that you could present your idea?
You know, as you asked that, and then just watching that clip really is very profound to me that I even remembered that, because it was such a long time ago that I hadn't thought about it in years. And I think writing that letter caused me to go back in time a little bit to just a lot of things that helped me become who I am. And I remember at 12, that's when my folks divorced. You know, my stepdad and my mom divorced, and I was the eldest of 5 kids, 3 younger brothers and 1 younger sister. And I felt like I needed to be the man of the household. And I always had a lot of responsibility on me as it was, being the eldest. There were expectations that I make sure everyone got off to school right, and I had to be home and make sure everybody was kind of lined up and doing what they needed to do as my parents were both working. And so when they divorced, I felt that I needed to man up, and I didn't have an image of a man in my mind that represented who I wanted to be. And so the only thing I knew was to create something.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, well, how do I think a man should walk? And I said, he should stand tall and he should not be afraid of anything.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was actually a shy kid growing up. And I decided I wasn't going to be shy anymore. And I said, you know what? Going forward, when I see someone, I'm just going to shake their hand and say, hi, I'm Guy. I started forcing myself to do that. And what it did was it opened up a whole new world to me, because this shy little boy now became this confident, still a little boy, but I thought I was a man at 12 and 13, and I carried myself that way. And I literally, when I think about it, I kind of ran a household like it was my house, like with the kids, like, if I said something, you better listen.
Okay.
And it wasn't until years later in my mid-20s, probably late 20s, early 30s, that I realized, you know what? I don't have any kids.
Mm-hmm.
These are my siblings. These aren't my children. I don't need to be in control of who they are or how they're living their lives, or, it was so much responsibility that I wasn't really doing what I wanted to do or living my life true to me. I was living my life trying to make sure everyone else was okay. And so I think that at some point it really did serve me, because it really allowed me to sort of stand up in a way that I had to stand up, that I didn't know how to.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no one there to tell me. So I had to create something that allowed me to navigate through that time frame.
Yeah.
But then it became burdensome.
So when you say burdensome, that means it was a conflict between who you felt as an authentic guy versus the one who was put in a position of responsibility as a surrogate parent, basically.
Yeah, and I realized, a lot of my childhood went towards being an adult,
Mm-hmm.
or acting like I was an adult, because there was no one to fill that void. And I felt that someone needed to fill it. And it wasn't even about, I didn't have anyone to fill it for me. So I felt like someone needed to fill it for the rest of them.
I hear you.
Because, who are they going to have to mirror or look up to, or emulate, or even see somebody that's kind of doing what's right, what they think is right as a kid.
Exactly.
Because truthfully, I was a kid. And I think about some of the things I did disciplining my siblings. It necessarily wasn't.
I hear you.
It wasn't the right thing.
I think we have a common point there, because that was my experience as well too.
Mm-hmm.
Playing the surrogate parent and doing the disciplinarian and doing all that stuff, and even spanking behinds and stuff. It's like, okay, but I'm 10.
Yeah, right.
But it was part of this challenge, I guess, something that was presented. The stimuli from my environment really called to me in order to survive to do something like that. So I hear you, brother. So Sheikh, tell me about your experience, and when you, because Sheikh is one of the younger brothers here, and what is your experience like in coming to an understanding of what it is to be a man?
Well, I was always athletic since when I was 8, 9 years old. I used to always play cricket back in the days.
Mm-hmm.
Always wanted to grow a stronger and stronger mentality throughout then. Mm-hmm. Then when I came to the country, when I came to in New York, I moved here when I was 12, and I got into handball. And when I started participating in tournaments, I wasn't doing so good in the beginning because I didn't have experience. I didn't know what I mean to have experience until my 4th or 5th competition. Then I finally won one. Then it has a lot to do with mental. When my coach told me that it's 70% mental, 30% skills, I didn't understand that. Your skills can all disappear when it's the moment. And the main thing is, not too long ago, like maybe sometime in October, I called my brother. He's in the military. He's in the U.S. Army. Right now, he's at South Korea. So me and him are on video call, and I told him, like, hey, anything can go down, right? He's like, yeah. Well, you got to be ready for it, and I'm ready for anything. So that gave me some clues, like, wow, is that what being a man is, like, accepting the consequences and being ready for anything. Okay. And that made me realize that that's one big step of being a man. just accepting consequences and being responsible.
Okay. Okay. So that means that we're accountable for our actions, you know, for whatever it is and whatever the consequence or reward, because I like to put the positive spin on it as well, because not everything is a consequence. But yeah, so we were talking earlier, Sheikh, and you were telling me that when you were 8, your dad instilled something in you. Would you share that with us?
Oh yeah. My dad grew up strict, and he always gave me that tough love. But always took care of me. And he really didn't like the fact that boys, if you cry, if you complain about something, he doesn't like the fact that you shouldn't complain throughout your day. You should accept it and try to fix your things. Just don't. He doesn't like the fact that I cry about it. When I was 8, I cried, and he really didn't like that.
Okay.
So yeah, that's the thing.
So he was instilling in you his understanding of what it is to be a male as well as a man, because you're supposed to have control of your emotions as well and present a certain way in order to fulfill that idea.
Right. He likes the suppressing feeling. Man, you suppress your emotions mostly. Going through things. He likes. I'm not gonna say he likes to go through it alone. He has family. Things he shares with. But the main point is you shouldn't let a small thing ruin your whole day and bother you throughout your lifetime. You should just move on or accept it or do something about it.
So it's about a coping mechanism in a way.
It's about adapting.
Yeah. But I just want to ride on that thought again, because about expressing emotions, because I know in my coming up, it was something, like you said, suppressed. You're supposed to present a certain strength. And if you don't present that, then there's a little something wrong. Is that valid in your experience? Anyone?
I think strength is many things. And as I've gotten older, I used to think that strength was if someone yelled at me or came at me a certain way, I was going to come at them 100% higher. It was like, you bring it to me, this strength, I'm coming back at you stronger, because I need to let you know you need to back down. As I've gotten older, I realized that most battles don't need to be fought, because they aren't your battles. That's someone else's madness or stuff. And I've learned to be able to look at someone and say, all right, is this about me or is this about them? And being able to see that it's about them, I walk away. Because one, for me, the most important thing in my life now is peace of mind. But I think as men, particularly men of color, one, because we're a minority in this culture, we are so dehumanized and minimized that the challenge is, well, how am I going to be a man in this culture? And mostly it is with either our women or our families or either our friends, where we have a chance to sort of really show that we're really a man, because the culture dehumanizes us, doesn't really validate what we bring to the table. So it's really a psychological game. And if you aren't able to really kind of see it coming at you and navigate through it, it can destroy you. I've seen it destroy friends. I've seen it destroy family members. I have family members that are in prison, that have been in prison all their lives. I have some that have been in and out of prison, and folks who died of drug addiction or been shot because they've caught robbing a place or something. So I know people that have not been able to make it, particularly as a black man, because or any man of color, because the society doesn't really see us. So how do you even deal with that?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. Because I guess it's in accepting the beliefs and values that they implement into your thinking.
Sure.
And identifying with that, and that way that game can be played.
Sure.
Because truly your values and belief comes from within you. It's not dictated by society at large, because that's nothing but collective opinion anyway, but that's just my opinion on it.
Yeah.
But as far as being a man, and the thing you spoke about with the attack basically on men of color, it's damaging. And sometimes it's so subliminal we don't even know it's in effect.
Exactly.
But it's actually playing a part in shaping our behavior and our reactions and responses to things, which can be either detrimental or supportive. So I guess another quality in being a man is discernment.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say discernment is a huge quality. Um, when you're young, it's hard to have discernment, though, because your experience is different.
Right.
And so you don't have a lot of experience sometimes to weigh things again. And even though I've seen some young folks that really, really have it together and really have a right sense of where they're going and what they want, and they're not going to let anything stop them in a positive way.
Right.
But I think that, you know, it takes time to really really even understand that the society, what they're throwing at you, because you don't see it, you're just living in it. And as you grow up, you just grow up in a society that perpetuates all of these things. And you have to be able to say, wait a minute, this is real and this isn't real. But, you know, a lot of us need guidance to do that. You know, sometimes, you know, a young man growing up needs somebody to sort of help him navigate through that. Because if you don't have that, you kind of, like I was, figuring that out on my own.
Yeah, grasping at it.
Yeah, and sometimes it worked, and sometimes it didn't.
The trial and error.
Yeah.
And I think that's basically a major part of it, trial and error, because even what may be passed down to us may have things that don't actually apply to how we feel, you know, within. So we have to then make our decisions based upon what is authentic about us.
That's the key. You know, when I was a kid, my stepfather told me, he said, a man has to be responsible for himself. 2, he has to be responsible for his family, and he has to take care of his family. Those are the 3 main things that a man has to do. But then he didn't do that. So it was like a mind trick for me. It was like, you know, it was like a Jedi mind trick. Here you instill this in me, and then you leave, and you don't do it.
You don't exemplify what you're putting out there.
So,
and
you know,
that happens a lot, doesn't it?
You know, it does. And I think, I think men need to be responsible, not just for their sons, but for their daughters, you know, and really play a big part in their lives, because that impacts each generation.
Yes.
And it just gets perpetuated and perpetuated. But then again, I've learned to forgive those men that have come before me, because they didn't have the skill set to do a lot of those things based on what they were dealing with. So I don't excuse them, but I can forgive them.
Because you understand.
I see it. Yeah, I'm at an age now where I can understand it.
Yeah, you understand it. And that's another quality, I guess, that a man can take on, is instead of going into the judgment and condemnation mode, let's try to understand.
Yeah.
And that way we can take that energy, instead of turning it into something aggressive and destructive, we can turn it into something else. And that's pretty key. But you brought up something about the female. And I'd like to ask each of you, what part did a female play in your coming to your understanding of manhood? Sheikh,
That's a good question. Part of females. Well, starting with being a man, I mean, you know, you grow up, you hit puberty at 12, 13. You know, I got mostly into handballs because in high school there used to be a lot of girls in the handball courts. So that made me, that made me want to play more and get even better, because I actually really loved playing. Yeah, it was a mind battle. It's like, I'm not gonna say it's as tough as boxing, but it's right behind it, because you're basically not hitting the person. You know, you're just hitting the ball instead of the person. And you just outdo each other. And speaking of, I mean, females. I mean, I met a girl sophomore year, high school, when I was 10. I mean, 10th grade. Yeah, I met her through handball too. So it was a different type of relationship. But I didn't know what to do. I was shy. I didn't know how to express some emotions. So I don't know if she can bring a manhood out of me. I don't know. Like, we're so young, you know. So yeah. But when it comes to females, I think about protecting, you know. Could be her, could be my mom, could be my sister.
Right.
You know, and I think that's the main key for me, was protection, like protecting females, respecting them.
Okay.
And that's also a part of being a man, you know.
Okay. Protection, another quality. Guy?
Wow. Wow, you think of women, it comes from a lot of different angles. I think about the women in my life and in my family, and, you know, women I've been attracted to or dated, or loved. And I think about, you know, one that just the foundation of the women in my family, from my grandmother to my mother to my aunts, there were a bunch of them. And they set a really strong foundation of just, I don't know how women do it sometimes, because even though the men may or may not be there, or they aren't always, engaged in the way they should be, the women made sure that home was taken care of. So when you came home, you felt safe. And they also instilled in me that you could do whatever it is that you want to do.
Okay.
And that you have the knowledge and strength to make your life however you want to make it. My grandmother was big on that. Like, there's no excuse for anything.
Okay.
Whatever you want to do, you can do. And so that, it was kind of like a dichotomy. The men were there, but they were kind of doing their own thing, whereas the women were like engaged with raising the children. And I don't know if that's an old school thing or not, because I don't have kids myself now, but I think that, and I think about my brothers, they are very much engaged in their kids' lives. But for me, the women bring out a whole nother nature in you, and they make you really kind of look at yourself in another way. And so what that does is it can either make you become taller or make you become shorter.
Yes.
And it really, and I don't even think it's about the woman. I think it's about who you are. And then also choosing that right woman that you're going to be around that's going to really sort of bring out the best in you. And I think a lot of times as men, we don't necessarily know what we're looking for. Women know better than we do. But sometimes we choose the wrong woman because we don't know what we want. Maybe the sex is good, and that's what we're thinking about, but it's not really about the true intimate connection. And I think that being intimate is really what helps make anyone better, because then you can really, if you're really intimate with someone, you can share your fears, you can share your thoughts, you can share your feelings, and then that also is a big liberating for a man, because he feels comfortable that he can trust his inner secrets with a woman. And that's a tough place, because a lot of men don't feel that way.
Well, it's being vulnerable.
That's a tough place to be.
It takes courage to be vulnerable.
Yeah, but we don't always know that.
Yeah.
Because again, society kind of comes at us one way. So then if you come home and someone else is coming at you another way, where do you go?
Exactly. You shrink.
Yeah, you shrink. Or you drink, or you
you find another way to cope.
You find another outlet that alleviates all of that, and you don't have to deal with it.
So a lot of the pressures come from the ideologies that we're empowering in a way. Whether it agrees with who we feel within or not.
I think it's so key for, particularly for men, that, and it's tough, but we have to really do the work on ourselves to know what it is that we want, what makes us tick. And I think for me, the definition of a man is, one, being true to your heart, to who you are here from your heart. Living life on your own terms and your own standards. Not owing anybody anything, but also supporting and taking care of those people who are in your life that you care about. And to me, those are the key components of just what a man should be. I mean, it's tough out here today, but you also have to be aware that whatever you decide to do and however you decide to be, that's who you're going to be. And if you don't want to do work on yourself to just elevate yourself to a higher mindset so you can be free of all the other BS that's out there, you're going to get caught up and tied down, and you're just going to spin in circles.
So in essence, the idea of manhood is fluid. It's something that is constantly growing, changing, and expressing in whatever way that they've taken, whatever they've taken on to identify with and project.
I think so.
And it's a journey of discovery.
Changing every day.
It's always a journey of discovery.
The journey of the soul, you said?
It's always a journey of discovery. It's it's still hard to figure out who you actually are most times. You're still building yourself, and I don't, sometimes it's hard for me to think, like, who actually am I? I'm making these decisions or do this. You're still slowly building yourselves to who we are.
Yes.
It's a really hard question to find out, like, figure out what type of person you are. This guy knows me in a different way. You know him a different side of me, but only person that can know who you are is it's a mystery. You know, you don't really know who you are.
Well, I guess it's because things are ongoing, a constant work in progress, and you're constantly responding differently to different stimuli. It's hard to pinpoint, one thing to say that this is it. We all have aspects.
Yeah.
So that it's understanding that gives you a better position, to not do yourself in.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what you're going to do. Like, you know what you're going to react to certain situations. Like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But you don't know when the surprise comes in. Like, hey, it's hard to, like, predict, I'm going to do this situation when it never happens. So
Right.
it's still, you still know you know some things of what you're going to do. Or,
Right.
Yeah,
But
what you're
most
doing.
of it is unknown until it is.
Until it is. And
Right.
it's still figuring out.
Yeah,
Still
in
discovery.
every moment.
Yeah.
Like I could fall back in this chair and the next moment I didn't know it was coming.
Well, that's one way of looking at it.
Because we don't know. The next
Yeah.
moment is unknown until it is. So
Yeah.
that's just life, basically. Okay, fellas, another question I want to ask you. What doesn't make a man a man?
I think, belittling someone, putting someone down, trying to show that you have power or force over someone. Because to me, if you're a man, your power is inherent in who you are. You don't have to show it to somebody who you may feel is not as strong as you or not as bright as you. So to me, anyone who uses their power in a way that is just an excuse to look good, to me, that's not manhood.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
kind of bullyish.
that's
isn't it?
bullyish. And interesting enough, I mean, as growing up, I kind of dealt with that, but as I've gotten older, I mean, people don't fuck with me. I mean, they don't. And I sometimes wonder, like, well, what, walking down the street, somebody might hit me or something, and, it's not on purpose, but, like, literally in my day-to-day interactions, people don't come at me in a way that I see them come at other people. And I wonder, like, all right, that's interesting. Why are they messing with that person all the time? Why is she saying that to him, a lot? Or why is this happening? When I talk to people, I either get a yes or no, or they, but it's really pretty straightforward. And I think that comes with, at this stage of the game, I have a good sense of who I am, what I'm about, and what I'm not about.
Okay.
And so I think as a man, you got to know what you're about. If you don't know what you're about, people are going to throw all kinds of stuff at you and try to take you off course. But I think back to your question that, what is not a quality of manhood is really, people who don't take care of their own. People, a man takes care of his own. A man takes care of his family. A man takes care of the people he cares about. A man looks out for his sons and his daughters. A man is forthrightful and really speaks truth as opposed to lies. Those are things to me that, probably because that's what I grew up with, that to me, that's not what manhood really exemplifies. You take care of yours. You're responsible for that. You're a provider.
So the deadbeat dad would be considered not.
To me, yeah. I asked some people that, he pays his child support. I'm like, he better. He's supposed to. Like, why are you holding somebody up? Holding them up because they pay child support, and really, they aren't paying it. Their salary's being garnished. That's the only way they pay. That's not. You know what I mean? And so how are you holding somebody up like that? That's not. That's not doing extra. That's doing what you're supposed to do, in my mind, when I hear that. And I say that, too, because I grew up with two men who didn't do that. My biological father and my stepfather. Neither one of them paid child support or took care of their kids. So in my mind, you ain't wrong with you, buddy.
You're not measuring up.
Yeah, you're not measuring up. I don't know. That's
So
just me.
There's a lot of things that can make you unmanly, or not something a man's supposed to do. What comes in my head mostly, it's just the attitude of showing off. And I think it's really, if you need to show off for yourself feel better, that's not really something, it's not really, not besides manly, it's just weird. I can like throw subs to a lot of rappers or a lot of people that shows off money online and taking a picture, or shows off cars. Like, go have this car. What do you have? Or that doesn't make you a man. If you need to show your things for you to feel appreciated, I think that's really unmanly. That's one way of looking at it.
Okay, so kind of being braggadocious, somebody who's always fronting with all of this.
For them
look
to
at
get
me.
respect.
Right.
That's really unmanly.
Okay. I'm going to throw the $1 million question at you now. Can a gay man be considered a man?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes. I don't think sexuality indicates manhood.
Okay.
I think manhood is about who you are and how you carry yourself. And that has to be with just being true to who you are.
Okay.
And to me, a gay man is a man.
Okay.
And, again, it's about those qualities of manhood that are being true to yourself, being honest with yourself, being straightforward, taking care of your business, taking care of your family if you have a family, and living life on your own terms. You don't owe anyone anything. That's just my 2 cents.
No, listen, all points valid.
Yeah.
All points valid. We're not judging anything. We're just exploring. Yeah.
I mean, like he said, mostly, being true to yourself is one really important thing. Even if you're gay, it's still, of course they can be a man. They still have to pay their own bills, with or without their own life partner, with their choices, So as long as you're taking care of yourself and your family, and, like I said, not feeling braggy to feel good about yourself, you're a man to me,
Okay. So that's saying that a person is not so much identifying with sexuality or gender expectations, it's being true.
Yeah, I think so, man.
This
is being true.
This is 2018,
Yeah.
I just think that you get caught up in so much that really it doesn't matter, to who people are. And we get so caught up in so much of what, I don't even know where these rules and regulations came from anymore. I know some of them came from religion and society and all of that, but, those things I think were done to hold people down. At this point, why are we trying to hold anyone down to live the life they want to live? I think that people should be free to live however they want to live.
Yeah, ideally that would be the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I feel like, there's a pushback in society now against so many of those things, just because, maybe they feel the expansion has gone too far, so society is trying to push back against it. But ultimately, the universe keeps expanding. Everything's going to expand.
Exactly.
Everything's going to change.
And you can't stop
You can't
evolution.
stop progress and evolution.
Yeah.
It's going to change. And you don't have to accept it, but then just get out of the way. Let people be who they are.
Yeah.
As long as you're not harming anyone else, you can be whatever, you can do whatever, you can whoever you want.
Live and let live.
Yeah.
Live and let live as long as you're not harming anyone else. And that's another aspect of a man, I guess, because we come up with stereotypes. We have in the iconery, we have all sorts of images that say man. We have, the warrior. We have the aggressor. You have the lumberjack and this and the that. And that's not necessarily true to your soul. That's not true to who you really feel. And if you express differently, and according to the way that we've been conditioned to perceive, they'll look at you and think something is amiss. But you're just expressing genuinely. But I guess because of the way, like you said, society, the ideologies that inform our behavior, you're going to get a certain response that people aren't aware of what it is that's motivating their perception and what they're critiquing through that perception and what the criterion is that's informing their critique.
Remember we talked about earlier just about psychologically how things are happening to men of color and that you aren't aware of it. I mean, society has all types of things that are put on people, and a lot of people grow up with their beliefs without questioning anything.
Exactly.
Or understanding what their belief is really based on.
point.
Is it something that someone put in their head when they were a child, or is it something they really believe in their heart that they know to be true or untrue? And, I think it's time for people to just open their eyes and live life based on who they are, not based on what someone is telling them.
Okay.
I don't know. I might be getting too esoteric out
That's
there.
okay. Free flow, brother. Free flow. So, in thinking about manhood, myth or reality, or myth and reality, we have a lot of myths that guide it, but the reality is what is in the moment as it is. As a man, as a person, as a conscious being, as an intelligence, as whatever. And it sometimes supersedes those ideas that try to encase and control. And maybe that's one of the agendas that coming up in this society is to encase and control you instead of liberate and let you express what comes from within.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a man, okay, I wanted to say this because you were talking about what I would call critical thinking or critical faculties. Could that be another attribute that a man possesses?
Yeah, that's powerful. I mean, that's one I didn't think about. But yeah, I mean, as a man, you should be able to look at something with a critical mind and assess it and make up your own mind on how that impacts you or what it is or how you feel about it. You should be able to have that critical thinking component to really understand, well, what is this that I'm looking at and how does it impact me and what do I want to do about it?
Exactly.
And if you don't, then you, again, just kind of walking blindly.
And you could be walking blindly thinking that you're fulfilling the expectation
A lot of us are.
manhood.
A lot of us are.
Because I'm carrying myself in a certain manner. I'm responding in a certain manner.
Trust me.
The expected manner, the what would I call it? The dictated.
I've been there.
We all have. I've done it too. I think we still do it.
Yeah, sure.
In many situations.
Sure. Yeah.
Because it's an ongoing process. Yeah. So manhood is an ongoing process.
I think it's fluid, man.
It
I
is
think
fluid,
it's
in my
ongoing,
opinion.
and Sheikh said it changes. You're constantly changing and evolving, and
You're alive.
you're alive. So if I was that same person at 12 years old today, in my 50s, I'd be like, what the hell is wrong with me?
And
and I'd be walking probably like a robot. I
because you would be
I'd still be
struggling.
living in that mindset.
And that's another point. The inner child, because that still exists within us. How much does that inform your projection of self? We're going to kind of put man aside and just say projection of self. That inner child, what?
I think, honestly, I don't know about you guys. Maybe, throughout my life, every day or every at least once a week, maybe at least once a month. There's some time throughout your life you have to let out as a childish thing. Even by yourself with your friends drinking, you have to let something out.
Yes.
Coming from a 6-year-old attitude, coming from an 8-year-old attitude, something silly, I think everybody does that. You kind of have to let it out. And that's just, when you go back, it's reality and who you are.
Right.
Everybody has to let something out.
True. Guy?
I'm a big kid, man. Sometimes I am so friggin' silly. Like, I have to check myself. Or I'll say something, I'm like, did you just say that? But what I find is, like, I can laugh at myself in such a big way. And I like to just play jokes on people and make people laugh or say something really that no one expects. Because to me, you got to have fun. If you're not having fun, something's wrong.
Yeah.
And I believe life is to be lived. So I'm going to live it to the best of my ability. And that little boy is he's there. I acknowledge him because he's a part of me, and he's what got me to where I am now. So I'm glad he's still there, because I feel like if I stop having fun, if I stop acting like a kid, then it's time to give it up. Somebody's calling me home. I'm like,
I hear you.
So I'm like, and so for me, it's like when people ask my age, I have to stop and think. And I have to count, like, wait a minute, because I don't even think of the number in my head. It's just like, no, you got to live life, and you got to enjoy life. And if you aren't finding that little kid inside that really likes to have fun and be playful, then you're not going to really enjoy day-to-day living, man. And to me, you got to do that. It's just because you get caught up getting up every day, going to work, seeing the same people. Some of them you might not want to see, but you got to see them. You got to deal with them every day, and you got to, buy food. You got to do this. You got to wash clothes. You got all this normal, mundane stuff you have to do. But that's not what life is all about. So you got to really kind of find ways to just enliven yourself and enjoy it and have fun. So I try to do that all day. And I'm like, if I'm not having fun, I need to change what I'm doing.
All right.
That's just my own.
So the inner child is an integral part of being a man.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Just to know that exists and it needs expression, it's okay.
I've seen some brothers that don't know how to have fun, like that are in my age range, that they just don't,
They get old.
Yeah, and so I'll be hanging with them, like I gotta leave.
I'm starting to feel stiff.
They're not doing it. I'm like, I can't sit around here, like. And I don't mind reminiscing about old times. That's cool too.
Yeah.
But that's not all I want to talk about.
Sitting on the porch in the rocking chair talking about days gone by.
No, they're gone.
And listen, if I live to be 100, I still want to go dancing.
Yeah, exactly. Right. You gotta have fun.
Yeah. So that's another key component to understand that part of you doesn't have to die. It's just how you express.
Yeah, it's totally how you express it. And I show you my dad, like my biological dad, I didn't meet him until I was an adult. But one thing that I took from him, and one thing I think that stays with me, is he was always having fun.
Okay.
He was always silly. He would say something really stupid to you or piss you off because it was so outrageous. But to this day, when I think of him, I just laugh because of the stuff he did, the stuff he said. And so that's how I look at, you know what, that's how life is supposed to be lived. You got to have fun.
I hear you. Yes. Enjoy it as much as possible. There's enough challenges that try to sway you the other
Sure
way.
there is, yeah.
So, and a final thought, what would you like to leave our audience with as far as manhood?
I'll say, follow your heart. Find who you are. Life's gonna throw a lot of curveballs at you, but you have to be ready for situations like my brother is right now.
Okay.
So, but you go through your path, then if it's consequences, you got to deal with them. Be free to who you want to be.
Okay.
And that's partially what man is.
Okay. Guy?
I would say live life, have fun, be true to yourself, take care of what's yours, and just be happy.
Said, when you're in your zone or when you're in you have a sense of yourself,
Right.
people react to you differently.
Yeah.
Because you're more present.
Right.
And you walk in a room and you get respect. And like you were saying, you don't have to have rings on your fingers, or you don't have to walk around with like a pit bull or anything like that, or flash money, or I've seen men gather together, and they're talking loud, and they're trying to maybe out-talk one another.
Yeah, we do that.
And,
We do
it's just like all this posturing,
Right.
and this is supposed to be like what manhood is supposed to be about. And then I think that's like, and maybe if you look, I think what I wanted to say is, if you look at it, then you have to say, well, all right, is that what I'm supposed to be? And if you are in company of men and you're not doing that, then if you're not sure about what you're about, then you're sort of like in a limbo area, because you're thinking about, oh, well, maybe I'm not measuring up to these guys, so maybe I'm not like a real man, or maybe you sense the falseness of it, and you're just gonna sit there and look at them and say nothing, and then they're gonna feel kind of weird, and they're gonna start like testing you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
So, but this whole, I guess what I'm hearing is that growing into your manhood is like an individual process, but it's also where you have to deal with what you were saying, like what is being fed to you and what you're being hit with.
Yeah, man.
You know,
You're getting hit with a lot all
yeah,
day.
exactly.
When you walk out the door, even before you walk out the door, sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's
Right.
like once you walk
And that
out,
is also what's playing that's already
in your
been
head.
put in your
Right.
head.
yeah, right.
And it's
that,
like,
that,
you gotta-
that voice in the back of
Yeah,
your
you
mind
gotta
that keeps going.
Too many voices.
It's like you have to unlearn certain things that are harmful, and then you gotta do a detox
Yeah, man.
because you've been shown things that are really not healthy for you at all.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And as you are growing, you are doing that all the time, I think.
Yeah, you have to readjust. You have to readjust. And what Guy was saying about with that inner child, that's why it was so important to go back, because that inner child was conscious, or the spirit
Yeah.
of that inner child was conscious to go, wait,
Yeah.
you know, there's a void there.
Yeah. Right.
Right?
Let me
And
feel this. Yeah.
I'm going to feel it,
Yeah.
but realizing the authentic voice.
Sure,
Going back
yeah.
to what we were
Yeah,
saying,
sure.
that inner child, that 12-year-old or whoever he was, he had an authentic voice.
Yes, he did.
Because the bombardment starts then too.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
bombardment. Because I remember
Yeah.
in the 70s, you know, I was watching the news. I remember we were living in Brooklyn. I just moved to the States, and they were saying, you know how they love to give statistics about black families, and they're saying, oh well, you know, they're headed by a single female or whatever. And I look around and I've seen a lot of the families that I know are like that, but that other part of that equation is not true. You know, that degradation and deprivation and all that, you know, aberrant behavior did not exist there.
Yeah.
You know, as you were saying, those women, they knew how to hold their families together.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and then say not because the primary nuclear male wasn't there.
You're right.
You had the grandfathers, the uncles, and the
Yes, you did.
brothers,
Yeah.
the village. You know, most non-European or African, it's the village that raises the family.
True.
You know, in my family, I was like a handbag. I went from one family, you know, one family member to the other, and I realized that it even started at an early age. Like when I was 6 months, you know, they said, yeah, you know, because I'm a twin, but I was always gone because I was always with some other family.
Wow.
You know, I mean,
Okay.
other family members, my cousins and whatnot. So I grew up with my cousins like siblings. So it's a different lifestyle. So we can't let that noise that's coming from out there define you. And then that's where that powerful child comes in and says, hey, look, I'm not going to take that. You know, the guys that are sitting there, I am not going to drink. I don't have to get high. Right? And I don't have to disrespect women or go out and impregnate many women to call that manhood.
You know, you mentioned I was today at work. I don't know how this conversation come up. I have a colleague. She's from Nigeria. She's born and raised in Nigeria. She lives in the Bronx. And another colleague of mine, he works for me. He reports to me, rather. And he's 30 years old, just had his first son. He's married. And we were talking about just male men. We were talking about male black men. And she was talking about from Nigerian perspective, they believe in education, and so they have their expectation is that they're going to go to college, and they're going to get at least one degree. Most of them have multiple degrees. And I was saying, you know, in the African American community, I remember there used to be a time when education was really looked at as what you aspired to. I mean, my folks pushed us all to go to college. I said, and interesting enough now, it's particularly for black men, that expectation is not there. The women go to college, but most black males will stay in that community that they're in, and I hate to say most, a lot, will stay in that community and they will do what they do in the community. Some of them going to jail and selling drugs, some of them getting a little job, but a lot of them don't aspire to college. And I said, when did that change?
This is what I want to say on that.
When did that change? Because it was
again-
always the expectation.
Again, thinking out loud, you know, we're involved in our day-to-day, and you know, we live in New York and everybody's hyper busy. But I think, you know, there are points where you have to stop and step back and look at what's going on. And very often I, again, compare the past to now. And I could be wrong, but maybe I'm right. Maybe you give me your feedback. But I think that when I go to public spaces where there's a mix of people, or if I go to places where there are predominantly black people, the men are not there. They're absent. And I want to say that I think that starting in the 80s, there was an assault on the black community.
There was. I agree.
And I think that there are many consequences of the assault, but I think one of the consequences is that families were destroyed. And there are so many of us that are either we're not alive anymore, or we're in prison, or we're dysfunctional, we're out on the street somewhere.
I agree with that.
And that's very profound.
Yeah.
And we think about, there's slavery, and that's history, and what the media tells us is that, you have these laws passed, boom, 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 so you should be able to do what you want, and we don't want to hear about the fact that you're talking about racism. But I think that you mentioned the drugs and the laws that have been in place in the prison system. I think all of those things have really beaten black men down. And so some of the models that I remember, because as you're talking, I think, all right, well, where were the positive role models of black men that I could look at? And I remember people of my father's generation, and they're blue collar workers. They're out there doing what they have to do, but they were there, and they had families. And I think about if I was taken to church, and there were black men in the church, and I saw what they did. And I saw men who were leaders in their community too. And so those were some positive models. There were, as you said, there were a lot of women who were holding it down. I mean, in my neighborhood, there were women all on each, they were almost anchoring the block, and I saw that too. But I think now is a different era. Not to say that there aren't any black men who are out there doing things, because there are. But I want to venture to say, in terms of numbers, there are not as many that are actually present for you to see, which is very, very profound and very, very horrible. It's terrifying, very scary. And I was telling Frank, I get up early. I teach, and I get up early in the morning. I open up my building because I get there before all this stuff happens, and I'm on the street. I'm on the trains, and I'm just looking at there are men. That's were some of the images in the poem. I see brothers out there. They're talking in schizophrenia. They're talking to they're hearing voices. They're talking to themselves. Or sometimes I see the same man. He's huddled over on that subway bench. And he's got all these things. How did he get there? There's and you get on a train. You get on a train or E-train. They're there. And everyone's kind of, they see him, but keep moving or go to another car. And like this whole dissociation. But one of the other thoughts I'm having is, and I was telling Frank, this is a dangerous place. I mean, again, the media was going to feed you that, everything's fine. And you should be pulling your weight. And not that you shouldn't, but it's presenting this idea that things are fine. But if I see black men falling apart and in my environment, if they're absent or if they've been broken down, something's going on. That's not right. Something's happening.
So that's another point, because how do we deal with our damage?
It has to come from.
That's
It has to come from within.
Yeah,
It can't be.
because we're going to be, you know what I call Earth trauma central. You're going to go through trauma. No matter what the degree, you're going to go through some trauma in this life. Now, with that understanding, like he was saying, how do people get to where they are? What was their story? What were the things that bombarded them so that they couldn't cope and they just broke down? Just in my opinion, I think in education, we need to understand how we operate more. Instead of just being downloaded with all this information about his story and all that. And that's another thing that plays a part in informing our behavior, the his story. You know, because that gives you something to identify with, a root. But who wrote that?
But how correct is that? Right.
And
What's it
why
based
do I have to continue that legacy? Just because I'm identifying a certain way. I'm going to write my own. I'm going to author my reality.
Well, that's what going back to that authenticity that we were speaking about earlier. The earlier you identify that, and the earlier that it's nourished. You know, instead of when you see the kid, you're going to say, well, no, you're going to beat it out of them.
Yeah.
People do that. They want them to conform.
I know, yeah.
You know? So if you can teach them to love themselves from an early age, I think that's where it starts.
And you got to give them something to aspire to. You got to let them know that there's more than what they can see right now. I don't know that we do, as a community, I don't know that we do a good job of really lifting each other up.
Right.
You know? We're so good at trying to get away from it. You know?
Or pulling down.
Or pulling down. One or the other. But, you know, we don't really reach back enough to capture those folks that are there that just need some guidance. And you got to get them at a young age, too. Because after a certain... I never want to say give up on anyone, because you can't.
It just gets more difficult.
It just gets more challenging.
I'm going to go one. I want to add something to the mix. If we're talking about definition, you were saying it's taking care of your family, right? Taking care of yourselves. But I also think once you have achieved your own sense of self and all the things that you have to do to make that happen, and you are observing or you're aware of all the destruction that's going on around you, that has happened, and what can happen, or what is like on the horizon, that what might happen, I think at a certain point a man should have a sense of responsibility towards his community. And I think that there are lots of what I like to call like a lot of different arenas where you can fight. You can't be in all of them.
Yeah.
Or it's like the other metaphor I use is like you got to choose which uniform you want to wear. You know.
I was gonna say it's hard to get back to the community when you're working 5 days, 9 to 5, 9 to 5, 9 to 5. Like you said, the people you work with, they capture you throughout that time. And this country's been running with people that doesn't really believe in climate change. And so that's,
You're right. Yeah, we'll do that. But brothers, I just want to join hands. Let's just show the world, show the world that we can do this.
Right.
This is how it needs to be.
Right.
Okay? Yes. Amen.